Aloha, everybody, from Indie Agency News headquarters in Portland, Oregon. That's what the PNW is on the hat, by the way, Pacific Northwest, where it is Hygge season. Well, we have to discuss this. Hygge season. I think it's spelled Hygga. I always pronounce it Hygge, but I've been told it's Hygge. We don't even know. But it's turtleneck season. It's getting cool up here, but it's getting hot in the in the agency business. For those of you who support our work, thank you so much. We really, really do appreciate it. To our members, we can't do it without you. And not to sound all NPR, but I'm going to sound a little NPR. Your memberships help us grow this little thing. And, a really key component to this is that we are part of the ecosystem. And that was a corporate speak word. But we are part of what's happening within this industry. And that includes the industry trades. For those of you who don't know, I was an editor at Adweek and an editor at The Drum earlier in my career. And we want to support the work that they're doing. And we want you to support the work that they're doing too. Please make sure that you are getting your subscriptions, your memberships, any opportunity to support the work that the industry trades are doing, whether it's Adweek, Ad Age, Campaign, The Drum, Marketing Week, Digiday, Contagious. Wherever you can invest in this type of work, please do, because it is really important that you do that. And we are here to build this community for independent agencies, but we also are incredibly grateful to be part of the wider community as well. And a very important story coming up this week from our friend Katie Lundstrom, who I'm going to bring in. So hello, sustainability editor at Adweek. How fare thee this fine day? That sounded very Renaissance Festival, huh?
Yeah, very. I am doing well, doing very well.
And we're both native Minnesotans, so we do know a little something about a Renaissance Festival.
We do actually. I went
Oh,
to the Renfest a long time ago, and it was really rainy. Not
oh yeah, no, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
So I'm of course not ready for this. So I'm in the middle of the article. But this one, Katie, this is really important. So we're going to talk a little bit about this piece and about this article you did, but I also want to talk a little bit more widely about sustainability and the work that you're doing in general. So the headline, as you can see, agencies and activists demand B Lab strip Havas of its certification and update rules. So the short form of this is that Havas Media, and it's important to caveat this, that it's Havas Media, won some business from Shell, which is it's a fuel company. They call it an energy company, but they trade mainly in fuel, and the data points to the fact that they're potentially not making as many investments in cleaner energy than people would hope. So I'd like for you to go back, talk a little bit about the background on this, and what Clean Creatives, the organization dedicated to ensuring that agencies are staying on the up and up. Talk a little bit about how this all manifested.
Yeah. So I mean, the latest news is that they sent this letter to B Lab asking them to update their rules to kind of, I guess they have some specific rules about like what fossil fuel companies have to do in order to be B Corp certified, in order to be eligible. So
Right.
they're basically asking them to like take that requirement from their own books and apply it to ad and PR agencies that work for. So they would have to apply that to their client rosters. So that's what they're asking. That they just kind of put that complaint in late last week, but it's been definitely a long time coming. This conversation around B Corp started earlier this year, when initially Shell put its media business up for review, and there was kind of a lot of whispering about like which agencies were pitching for that account, and
Mm-hmm.
the activist community specifically was very interested to know which agencies were pitching, which holding companies had agencies that were pitching, because there's at the same time this movement to push ad and PR agencies to get rid of the fossil fuel companies that are already on their roster, because of the climate impact that that work can have.
Right.
So that started happening earlier this year. There's kind of this like talk, this like buzz about, okay, wait, if Havas is pitching, what does that mean for the other Havas agencies within that holding company? And
Right.
especially within Havas, where they all have the Havas name, I think that particularly irked some of the activists,
Right.
because it does sow some confusion around what it means to be a B Corp. So there was some talk about that for a long time. There was, I think, quite a it was quite a shock, I think, to the climate activist community within the ad and PR world, when Havas did win the account, because of these B Corp agencies that live within that holding company,
Mhm.
and Havas has taken kind of a stronger stance historically on sustainability and climate stuff. So yeah, I think that came as a shock, and that, I think, definitely motivated this group of agencies that are both B Corps and have signed the Clean Creatives Pledge, which is that
Right.
pledge that the group Clean Creatives has for agencies to pledge that they'll never work with fossil fuel companies, because of the climate impact. So this kind of overlap between the the pledge signatories and
Mhm.
B Corp agencies came together and wrote this letter to B Lab.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
let's show that real quick. So, here we go. And I think that where this, obviously hits us is that a majority, if not all of these agencies are independent agencies. And yeah, you can definitely see some of the agencies that are here.
Mhm.
And one thing that stood out in the piece that you did was that it was Department R. So it's a B Corp certified tech and marketing agency in
Mhm.
Amsterdam. And they work with fossil fuel companies, but it's more on energy transition work and technical services. So it occurs to me that, yes, if you're looking at this from more of a macro level, then yeah, a lot of this makes sense. But when you start getting into some of the specifics about the impact that an agency or a PR firm can have to move one of these companies forward, there's this demonstrated ability to actually do some good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the dept or I don't even know how to
Department R. We're calling it Dep R,
okay.
Department R. Right.
I think they occupy a specifically like a particularly interesting gray area, I think, because they're not doing ad and PR work for those companies. They are an agency that does a lot of different things, but they're mostly doing like technical work
Mhm.
for those utilities, and those are local utilities, not huge, that not companies that would be considered big oil, like it's
Right.
not Shell, and it's not Exxon, it's not Chevron. It's these local utilities that are working to transition from the oil and gas sources of energy that they have historically used to more renewable energies, and trying to figure out how to make the logistics work on that. And that's a hard job. It's like
Right.
really complex, and it's a really important piece of the energy transition. So that is really interesting. It does beg the question, like where would they fall, if these demands were met as is, where something like that would fall. I think, um, yeah, I think that one is particularly interesting. There's other criticism that kind of touches on different parts of this argument that's made by Clean Creatives and the signatories of that letter, but this one I thought, I've been speaking with them for a while. They've been a B Corp for quite a while. They were a B Corp before Wyden and Kennedy,
Right.
a
Right.
big global network, um, and they have not signed the Clean Creatives Pledge for that reason. They're like, we have this really valuable work that we do,
Mm.
um, and it just doesn't serve our goals to to sign that and have to turn down this work just because of the unique space that they occupy kind of between ad and PR and technical services. So yeah,
Right.
that it's a complicated one.
Yeah, and I think that again to go back here, Havas Media is not B Corp, but Havas London is, Havas Immerse, Havas Lems, Havas New York. These are all B Corp. Um, and the fact of the matter is, it's not easy to get B Corp certification. It's
Right.
not something you simply walk into. It takes a lot of time, effort, and quite frankly, investment.
Mhm.
In your experience covering this space as sustainability editor, what have you learned about the impact that becoming B Corp is for an agency? What impact does that have on an agency, good, bad, or indifferent?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with several agencies that have gone through the process. I won't pretend to understand the whole thing because I know it's an enormous
Right.
undertaking. Um, but I think from what I've heard, it's like it really pushes an agency to think really deeply about every aspect of their business and the impact that it can have. And they definitely do have to look at their client rosters. And
Mhm.
that's one thing I mean, I remember back when I was first reporting on the F list, the first time that Clean Creatives put out its report that connects ad agencies and PR agencies to fossil fuel clients, because a lot of times those relationships are kind of hidden. The first time I was reporting on that, there were certain B Corps that were very concerned about being on that list because the initial one like highlighted relationships that went back a few years, and some of these agencies had gotten their B Corp certification in the meantime, and were very concerned about what that might mean for their B Corp status to be listed in the F list or even have
Mhm.
the appearance that they had these fossil fuel clients. So I think it definitely requires agencies to take a hard look at what the impact of that work for fossil fuel clients could be. Um, I think it also allows for some of this nuance that we're talking about with Department R. Like um, it's it's not a black and white system, B Corp, like
Right.
you you win points for certain things and you lose points for other things. So, I mean, I could definitely see a situation in which you're like looking more holistically at a relationship that agency might have with an energy company and then kind of assessing what that might. I mean, I haven't been inside of these processes, so
No,
but
no.
I feel like you can understand where that gray area might play
Right.
out differently.
Yeah, and, and speaking to others as well, I think that there is, speaking to those who've become B Corp agencies, it becomes in ways a North Star for them.
Mhm.
And, I think one of the pieces that I did shortly before I left Adweek was around, B Corp and agencies, and I think part of the struggle with this is, and you had noted this in the piece that you did, that, it's really important to keep the purity is not the right word for it. It's more to ensure that the real spirit of this stays super, super clean, no pun intended to Clean Creatives, um, because then you start getting dilution of the impact of what B Corp is meant to achieve in the first place. And, looking at the F list from Clean Creatives, I mean, let me share it with everybody here. I mean, this is
Every holding company is on there.
yeah, and
Tech
yeah,
stack
but
if
yeah,
you're
but
yeah,
but yeah, you start floating through, but then you get down to our indies and lots of them. I mean,
yeah,
lots and lots and lots of them.
yeah.
So, I think that there is logic to the fact where it's like, well, why would we be B Corp if, if this is happening? So it begs the question, and again, we're simply just taking a look at this situation with Havas and our best judgment, and it is too early to say. And in fairness, B Lab has said, "Hey, listen, this is a case to case, case by case basis. We need to take a deeper look at this." So I think that the pragmatic side of this is smart,
Mhm.
but on the other side of it, you have activists in a lot of ways deservedly saying, "Hey, what's going on here?" In your mind, how do you think this might shake out, and what do you think is the right way forward
Yeah.
for everybody involved?
I mean, I don't know. I think there are compelling arguments on both sides, to be honest. I asked Duncan during their, call with journalists ahead of this announcement, Duncan Meisel, the executive director of Clean Creatives. I asked him which way he thought it would fall, with B Lab, and he said that he has absolutely no idea. Um, and yeah, I mean, I I think I would have to understand, like, the inner workings of B Lab to have a
Right.
better sense of, where this should go. I don't pretend to understand that organization completely, but I have heard from some folks that are either very familiar with the process or have gone through the B Corp certification process themselves, that they feel that B Lab is already stretched a little thin, and they
Mm,
worry that by kind of trying to pile on too many things, like B Lab already does this very specific thing where it's spreading out, like, it's asking companies to identify their stakeholders more broadly than
mm,
just their shareholders, right? Like, it's doing something very specific by
right.
spreading out that impact and using a very robust, like, measurement process to figure out how how their impact shakes out for all those different stakeholders. Um, by then requiring different rules, that kind of does, confuse the process a little bit. Although, I don't
Mhm.
know, it was interesting because some folks were like, it's not good or bad. It's multi-stakeholder versus shareholder. Like, it's either
Right,
profit focused or focusing more broadly on people, planet, and profit.
right.
But B Lab themselves has kind of muddied the waters here, I think. Like, by creating these specific rules already for fossil fuel companies and other, it's not just fossil fuel companies, that have specific requirements i- in order to become certified or just to start the process. There are other, like, Brazilian agribusinesses that have,
Right,
there are other Swiss banks are another one that have
right.
specific requirements. Those that's already kind of baked into the system. So I think it's the purest argument. While I understand it, um, I think it's already a bit muddied,
So it's a little
and I think,
nuanced, yeah.
B Lab itself has said, "It's time for an update here. We're working on that anyways. We're gonna take
Mhm.
all this into consideration and, like, chart the path forward." So,
Right.
I think it'll be interesting to see what happens, and how they communicate about it all, because I think there's a lot of, very invested parties.
Ye Yes. Vested and invested for
Yeah.
sure. There's no doubt about it. Um, so yeah, you look at the one argument over on the clean creative side, deservedly so. Then
Mhm,
you have the agency side, which, is trying to stay sustainable financially.
mhm.
Um, and this is where it gets muddied because again, you could have that argument that, well, this part of the company isn't B Corp certified. It doesn't necessarily play to those rules, but um, it occurs to me that if they want to keep this pure, that they would have to ensure that these B Corp agencies don't necessarily touch the work, and global holding companies generally have those resources to be able to achieve that.
Right. Yeah.
So there goes your that's your mitigating factor, I guess.
Yeah, that's another thing that I guess I didn't really touch on, is that I think smaller B Corp certified agencies are, feeling a bit like frustrated that the larger agencies with seemingly endless resources. I think when you're coming from the perspective of a really small shop, um, they have a huge advantage in like who they can hire to do like if you
Right.
can hire a consultant to do your B Corp certification for you, like that's a very different process than sitting down as a founder with your like, dozen
5 people.
employees
Right.
or
Right.
5,
All 5
yeah.
of us sitting around a table. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very different realities, so I think there's some, I think fair frustration on the part of those small B Corps and yeah, maybe a little bit of an imbalance there.
Right. I if this were a company other than Shell, do you think the response would have been equally as virulent? There's a $5 word for you. Uh, or, because I think there are certain companies in fossil fuels that are under the microscope a bit more. You've got Shell, you've got Chevron.
Excellent.
There's like a big group of them.
Yeah,
Some, BP. There's several that are at least at least they're trying to show that they are moving towards more renewable energy. Your results may vary. Do you think if it was a company other than Shell, it would have been just as bad, the backlash, or something else?
I think that if it was any of those oil majors that have a history of lying about climate change through their ad agencies, I think it would have been a similar
Yeah.
response. I think if it was a smaller one, it might have been a little bit different, but these these big brands like Shell and BP and Total and Exxon and Chevron, they've all got a pretty rough track record when it comes to what they've communicated on climate, what they knew at the time, and how
Right.
they used their ad agencies and PR agencies to, you know, create the messages that would resonate and shape public opinion on climate. It's not. I don't think any of those would have gone by quietly, I guess.
Yeah, let's just chalk that up to that's my dumb question for this interview. Yeah, it's like
No,
being
I mean, I
honest.
think yeah, there are the reality is there are very few oil companies that have made the transition to something like Ørsted is the only
Well, and
example
part
that's
of it.
always pointed to, but
Right, and part of it is not so much where they are, but it's the investment in it that they can demonstrate in annual reports.
yeah.
That's where I think it's different, where if it's public if it's publicly there and it is actual investment into it, that's one thing. But
Mhm.
to be opaque, that seems to be the way forward for a lot of these companies. So
Yeah.
what else are you working on that you've got coming up or that you've had recently that have been interesting that people should be checking out with your work?
That's a good question. We have a an event coming up next month in New York, Next Tech, where we'll be getting into the like really nerdy in the weeds programmatic stuff on climate.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
like how does your media buy generate carbon and how can you make sure that you're not playing in the pools where there's a lot of extra energy wasted. So that'll be cool. That's November 14th and 15th in New York. And I think it'll be virtual as well. Um, but honestly,
You're going on vacation soon
going
anyway,
going
so
on
you're
vacation
checking
tomorrow.
you're
So
checking out. I understand that.
yeah.
I understand that. We do have a comment from one of our viewers here. So, yeah, so Serena, thank you for sharing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the intention here is to open up dialogue and to open up discussion about this. It's not necessarily to prognosticate, but it is a real question that is coming up from clean creatives. Should this certification be rescinded? So
Yeah.
I feel like this is a story that of course Katie's going to continue to track
Yeah.
and And I think, I think in the next 3 months, I think it'll be very interesting. I think it's something we will definitely want to revisit.
Totally. Yeah, I think it and I agree. I think that uh B-Lab has been super receptive to
Yeah.
this, and like they've had meetings and like several meetings, like a series of meetings, which honestly it was I think the process was they were like, we're concerned about this. And B-Lab was like, what you should do is you should file a formal complaint. So it's not like they were like,
Right.
that
Right.
wasn't a surprise. That was part of a
It's,
process that B-Lab, like,
yep.
has set up for this kind of feedback from
Right. Well, what I can say is there's a lot of smart people at B Lab. There's
yeah.
a lot of smart people at Clean Creatives. There's a lot of smart people on this interview. I'm sorry, one smart person on this interview. That's you. Um, but again, I think we'll take a look at this and revisit it, and we'll keep tracking that. But again, Katie Lundstrom, my former colleague at Adweek, she is the sustainability editor over at Adweek. I can't say enough good things about Katie, and I'm just going to say it because she's sitting here. Absolutely love the work that she does. I just think she's an incredibly important part of the reporting in this industry to help us make sense of what purpose, what sustainability, what all of it actually means in a practical sense. And honestly, it was a joy working with you over at Adweek, and it's a joy being able to collaborate with you here over at Indie Agency News. And a reminder to everybody, again, please, please, please support your trade publications. Get those subscriptions, get those memberships. Make sure that you are investing in all of it. Now, of course, selfishly, we would like to have you as a member of Indie Agency News. We got a lot of stuff cooking. But again, we want to be in the middle of all of this, not necessarily off to the side. So, Katie, thank you so much for joining us. Have an amazing vacation. Stick with us as I send you backstage.
Mhm.
And thank you to everybody for joining us. If you want to get more information about what we're up to, go to indieagency.news. On behalf of all two of us running this thing, I'm Doug Zanger. We'll see you next time.